The gods created him, trained him, used him, and now they need him to save them from extinction. But after everything that they've done, well, X here, he's not sure if he even wants to help these motherfuckers. So in this first chapter from my book, The Weight of Names, X faces the gods and delivers a bit of a grim report. Enjoy.
X glanced over his shoulder toward the light. Running a pale finger along the edge of his black turtleneck, he pulled its itchy grip away from his throat. It seemed to tighten with each step he took closer to the gods. But retreat was still an option. His old life waited for him up there, out there. Wildflower petals in vast Forestian valleys haunted him. Come back. But abandoning his mission now would all but ensure the gods' extinction, his father included. That singular fear, his father's legacy decaying to nothing with X to blame, turned his chin away from the light and back toward the musty corridor in the belly of Mount Olympus that led to the ironically named hearing room. He knocked, he entered. He approached their bench and stood on his well-worn mark. Behind their table, the godly firing squad sat, armed only with words that stung like bullets. Each god wore a predictable expression. Barton, bored. Thaddeus, stern. Ephraim, irritated. And Abraham, with anticipated fatherly disappointment. Abeline's chair sat empty, as it had for the past year without explanation. Well, Ephraim began with his usual charm. X reported the result of Lucas's latest experiment. She died. Ephraim sneered. I'll get details, X replied calmly, knowing the only thing that stoked Ephraim's anger more than hostility was indifference. With so few pleasantries of his own anymore, X enjoyed grating the temperamental god. Don't come back without answers, Ephraim barked, dismissing X with a flick of his wrist. Beside Ephraim, Abraham's expression shifted slightly. Expected disappointment had come to fruition. X left, endeavoring to maintain a taut posture and high head. But as the door closed behind him, he allowed his shoulders to sag. He shared the god's frustrations. Retreating from the god's lair, X replayed how he'd allowed himself to get here. His feet bore the scars of 6 decades, traversing from city squalor to isolated foraging villages, studying the most intricate nuances of Forestian tribes. Once a vocal advocate and defender of Forestians, recent events had tainted, but not yet destroyed, X's affection and empathy for them. First, Forestians had rallied behind Alex der Schoenvlast and Kierli Wilhelm's brutal wars and obvious attempts to unify disparate tribes under one ruler. If the Kierli succeeded in taking the Forgotten Forest, the gods would intervene. X could only hope they'd lead with diplomacy instead of force. But then, 3 years ago, a Forestian rumor came strutting over the Sentinel Mountains that would throw the gods, and by extension, X's life, into turmoil. The claim? In the Forestian village of Istenofold, a mortadel had given birth. The gods could tolerate war, welcome it even sometimes, but declaring a scientific breakthrough that the gods had failed to accomplish in almost 900 years? That was unacceptable. The gods did not believe the rumor and summoned X to find the responsible parties and debunk the myth. At the time, Ephraim had said, X is the only mind capable of uncovering the truth in front of everyone. The little boy, still alive, though mostly silenced, in X's heart immediately searched his father's face for a fleeting, minute, twitch, tinge, or speck-sized hint of pride. Instead, Abraham, with robed forearms cradled against his stomach, stood like an indifferent crimson bat. Once, when X still followed the path Abraham had set for all his mortadel children, his father would have nodded in approval, perhaps even clasped his shoulder. That was before X chose translation over the laboratories, before he defied Abraham's vision of mortadel excellence. Now he was nothing more than a disappointment who happened to be useful. And even that usefulness was wearing thin. Abraham had championed the theory that by curing Mortadel infertility, they could restore goddess fertility and thus save the species. But no one in the Isle of the Gods labs had done it. Abraham's indifference signaled that he didn't give X much chance of success either. But this was X's chance. Surely, when he succeeded, despite the odds, his father would at last acknowledge that X's life as a translator was a worthy one. X would finally win his father's respect and, God's willing, his love. And so, X put the life he loved on hold and accepted the appointment. From formal interviews to casual meetings, Forestians loved boasting about besting the gods. Believe it, one Forestian urged. Alexander the Great united us, and Celeste rewarded us with a miracle. Makes you nervous, doesn't it, Mort? Another mocked. We solved it before you and all your fancy science could. Guess your fathers ain't gods after all. Most claims boil down to 2 points. We're chosen, nana boo boo, and fuck you. But as X explained in his first report in the hearing room 3 years ago, the only remark that truly unsettled him came from a lady of Giant Meadow, who had casually said, "Oh, it's just a lark." Anyone else would have taken that statement verbatim, but X knew better. Belittling tones were the axes ladies used to chop down the Kirli's achievements. Acts of covert rebellion against their conquerors. Ironically, the more they poo-pooed an impressive Kirli accomplishment, the more likely they believed it. Between the braggart claims and jealous dismissal, X's own skepticism mostly reigned. Forestians delighted in taunting the usurpers, the forest's preferred term for the gods. To start a rumor for no other reason than provocation fit the forest's uprising modus operandi with capital FUs. X's skepticism changed when he arrived to Istenofold. From his first steps into the eerie village, he could tell its citizens had something worth hiding for the first time in their lives or the lives of their ancestors. Then, prayer's answer, a temperamental philosophy professor who dabbled in amateur genetics, Lucas of Barak the 18th, claimed to have stumbled upon the solution while sequencing DNA strands, as a genetics hobbyist does. Despite the nagging voice in X's ear, Lucas had presented an impressive notebook detailing his process. Additionally, Lucas's sister Isabel had corroborated the evidence. With his gaze fixed on finally impressing his father, X brushed aside his doubts as he brought Lucas to the Isle of the Gods and certified him as their solution. Under the full, powerful resources of the Isle, Lucas had been tasked to recreate the achievement. Yet, Lucas's experimentation had killed all test subjects, X's fellow Mortadels, and cost the Isle millions in coin. But more than either issue, the gods were losing something they weren't accustomed to cherishing: time.